Good morning, podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. And Happy New Year again. I did a short podcast last week, and I hope you listened to it earlier this week. And this is my first guest of the year. This gentleman's name is Bret, and I'm going to let him tell you his last name. He is the president and CEO of the Carlsbad Chamber. And we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to talk about a lot of things. But Bret, welcome. Happy New Year. How do you say your last name again?
Yeah, it's Schanzenbach. And
yeah, so
it's a mouthful, but yeah, thank you, Ed. I appreciate the invitation to be here. Happy to join.
That's one of those names when you're in school that the teacher never gets it right the first
Exactly.
You train them for the first 2 months.
And when you do have somebody get it right, you're more shocked than the opposite. You're like, whoa, how did you do that?
If they get it right the first time.
Exactly.
English teachers hopefully would do that. But
yeah.
So I met Bret through when I ran the Chamber of Commerce in Poway. We used to get together on a mostly monthly basis and have a breakfast with all of the chamber heads in the North County. And at the time I met Bret, he was running the Vista Chamber of Commerce and had done that for how many years?
I ran Vista for 10.
So 10 years, and now you've been with Carlsbad for 3, I think?
I just finished my 4th.
Oh, wow. So you've been in this business a long time. And yeah. I said before we started, Chamber of Commerce to me are interesting. I think they need to get a little more up to date because we kind of think of them as the 60s and 70s with the sundowners and our parents going, or whatever. So I guess give me a little synopsis of what you think, why the chamber is important. We'll just go like that.
Sure. Well, I'll share with you why I've fallen in love with the industry and why even a couple times in my life when I considered, moving on, I didn't. And I know you know some of this, but for your listeners and viewers, the chamber is kind of like a hub within the community, and everybody thinks of the chamber as working with the business community, which is true, of course, but we also work with government, local, regional government. We work with public safety. We work with schools, and then we also work with the nonprofit community, and they kind of all come together through us. And then my vision and our goal is always to make a positive impact on all of them through what we do on a day-to-day basis. So the ability to have positive impact throughout the whole community is why I love what we do. And I know you know this from your days. It's like no 2 days are ever the same.
Oh no.
And so there's a lot of variety to it, but I really love that opportunity that the chamber has to make a positive impact on the overall community, not just the businesses themselves.
So one of the things I was very adamant about doing was educating the general public on what the chamber does, right? So if you went to somebody that was walking down the street and asked him what the Chamber of Commerce does, it'd be rare that you could get an answer even close to what we did.
Yeah.
My job, I felt a lot, was to get a lot of people in one room so they could do some business together. But in addition to that, we had to be visible in the public so people would do business locally, right? We know if we can. I did a big thing about buying locally, right? So those tax dollars go back into your community, whether it's gas or a car or whatever you're buying.
For sure, yeah.
You should really try to shop locally, and even if it's at a major store like a Walmart or something, it's still going back into your community. So it's always important to think local first. If you can't get it local, I understand, but and I would even say to our chamber members that were outside of Poway, you need to buy local too. You need to buy where you're at, where you live.
Yeah.
So you can get those streets done and things like that. So what are you guys doing, if anything, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, we're just having a conversation here, to kind of get into this day and age with chambers, because they do have a reputation of being old school ways to do business.
Yep. And I think that's a fair, assessment. People have a tendency to think of, we used to call it their grandfather's chamber, where guys in a back room with bankers with stogies and just, doing back channel deals or something. And that's how networking was. And we still do have not networking opportunities. That's definitely part of what we do. We would never just get rid of that. I was just this morning came here to chat with you from one of our core networking events. It's a breakfast every first Friday of the month, and we had 65 people there. It's not as many as we had pre-pandemic, but it still was a good group. It was a good vibe. So we still do some of those things that people stereotypically associate with chambers. And some of them, still go well, and some of them need to be put to pasture. But to your question, like, how do we come into the modern times? I like to talk about it this way. Back, I don't know, 20 plus years ago, everybody thought and talked about economic development as an activity to try and get that cool company or that great the next Amazon or the next Qualcomm to come to your community and locate, right? And then that would give good jobs, which is true. It would be good jobs, good for the community, blah, blah, blah. But what we knew even before the pandemic hit, that people can go and take their jobs with them. They can choose to work from anywhere, from a lot of professions. And then the pandemic hit, and that just grew exponentially. So what we have to be about in economic development, which is a core piece of what we do in the chamber world, is talent attraction. Like, we have to help our location, whatever chamber we're in, we have to help our location become a great place to live, to start a new business, so it's got to be all these factors. And so we very quickly end up into the quality of life metrics. What is it that makes a place a great place to be? And so is it good schools, right? Affordability, low crime rates, and amenities that people want. It has to be business friendly and entrepreneur friendly for starting a new business. So all these factors are things that we look at and are like, how can we positively impact these? It's not just about sitting back and creating an environment where people can trade business cards. So one of the initiatives that's a big deal to us right now is workforce development. And I know you've heard this, and I know you're out in the business world. It's so hard to find good people right now, right? And it might be softening a little bit at the moment as you and I are speaking, but still, in general, as an overall trend, it's getting harder and harder to find great people. So we've been engaged in 2 or 3 different things that are specifically with the intent of growing talent locally, of highlighting careers locally for the upcoming student to tap into, and connecting these dots. One of the things we found, and I have a feeling you can resonate with this, is that schools are great, and I come from a family of educators, so I'm not bagging on schools.
Right.
But most teachers come straight out of college and they go teach, and yet they're the ones educating the next workforce, and they've never worked. Now, teaching is working. I'm not saying it's not, but you know what I mean? Like real, like the kind of job, all of our members do. They don't really have a frame of reference for it.
Well, I tell you, I'm 100% in agreement with you, but there's another piece to that over my life I've looked at. We were raised different in a different time, right?
Yep.
We had a different type of work ethic, and
yes,
raising grandkids now versus my kids, very big, 25-year swing. There's a different mindset on work ethic in the schools these days than there was when we were kids.
Yes.
And it wasn't this, I'm not going to go into I wish it was the 70s again and wearing polyester and dialing a phone like this. It was about a different just mindset about work ethic, right? We have kids now there's one of these kids, right, making $10 million a week off of YouTube, and everybody else, but all these other kids go, well, that seems easy. Oh yeah, Of course it seems easy, but it's always easier seemingly.
Yeah, exactly.
We were working with CTE, Career Technical Education. Do they have that up there? Probably.
Yes, absolutely.
So we had that at Poway Unified, and we were working with that. The problem with that I saw right out of the gates with that is it only affected about 30% of the students, right?
Right.
It was only beneficial to about 30. So what do we do with the other 90% that have to go to work every day and pay daycare and do all these things when they're adults? But I can tell you, when I was in the moving business, someone asked me one time, what do you look for in an employee? I said, someone that'll show up with their shoes tied. That's all I really needed. because I could train those people to do anything. What I needed was enthusiasm, a smile on their face when they got there, and the willingness to learn and work. And I'm continually telling my kids and grandkids that it's what you're learning in school is not as important as how you're learning to learn, right?
Yeah,
You got to be able to absorb information and execute that information and trust your instincts. I think I give kids that. I work with younger people at work, and they say, "Well, what do you think I should do?" I said, "Trust what you think. I mean, it's not a bad. You probably have good instincts that you don't even know about.
yeah,
You may make some mistakes, but come on, that's what life's all about."
yeah, yeah,
But I don't think people understand that the chamber does get involved
for
in that
sure.
area. Yeah.
No, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. That, I mean, for some reason, those skills like that get up, suit up, and show up mentality has been labeled as soft skills. And then when
Yeah.
we think of the term soft, we think that means it's not as important, like because it's soft. So that's obviously not core. Or and I think that's such a bad way of looking at it. That work ethic that you just mentioned is core to 90% of the work that gets done. The other 10% you can train and get the competencies. And again, I'm not bagging on schools here, but just in the vein of us having a discussion, so much of school stuff gets focused on test scores and test
Yeah.
results, and then what percentage of our kids go to 4-year universities and what percentage go to college and blah blah blah. And it's like and so anyways, we try really hard to bridge the world of real work back into the life of education. And so there's a few initiatives we do, and but there's so much more that we could and should be doing. So we're always trying to, as there was never enough hours in the day, there's never enough bodies to do everything you could and would like to be doing in this chamber world, which is one of the things that's exciting about it, but it's also one of the things that just overwhelms you about it. But
Sure. Well, and
yeah,
you have a budget. I mean, you can't just keep hiring people to do all the stuff that you don't want to do or that you don't have time to do. So, um,
exactly.
and
All
it's
right.
not like you're a profit center where you're making money off of a product or something that you can raise or lower the price. So that was some of
Exactly.
the concerns we had. And I can tell you that, and you don't have to answer this question since you're current, but I had a definite, uh, lack of response from board members as far as getting involved. I think the board members now are better than the ones I had. Not bashing, they were all nice, very nice people in that, and they had lives just like me. But I really counted on those board members to step up and help me, and I didn't get that. I
Yeah.
didn't feel like I had that support. Like I said, the board members now seem like they're doing more.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a mixed bag. And as you pointed out, I mean, board members are volunteers, and so
Mhm.
you and I, and on the roles we recognize that. But and so sometimes you get board members who are filling a seat and like having their name on that roster, and
Yeah.
it's a public thing, and so it's a good thing for them. Uh, but man, as you pointed out, the board members who do roll up their sleeves and get involved, man, you
So
really
important.
appreciate them. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
vital and so helpful.
Well, and I'm of the thought, and I always have been, that everybody I meet, I can learn something from, right? From doesn't matter who they are. It could be a child. I can learn something from a child that
For
knows something
sure.
I don't know. And those board members, the resources they have in their head. I mean, some of these guys. I mean, we had guys from General Atomics that were realty people that I don't understand that side of the business, but
Yeah.
uh, and guys that work at Qualcomm and things like that. So we're super smart people, which we have to appreciate those,
Well,
their
and I
minds.
think to that point is one of the reasons we work so hard at the chamber of having a good diverse board, like
Yeah.
representing, all size of shapes of companies, retail versus manufacturing versus home base versus service, young board members, old board members, male, female. I mean, you just try to have this huge diversity, ethnic diversity, so that because it just gives you all these different perspectives that can be of value. And yeah, so I agree with you.
So let's back up a little bit. So you went to college? Where did you go to school?
I did. I went to Franciscan University of Steubenville, a little Catholic liberal arts school in
Oh yeah, I
Ohio.
know Steubenville. Yeah.
Yep. And I went to school for psychology, and I was going to be a marriage and family counselor, and I was going to save the world from divorce.
Nice.
Yeah, just a small goal.
So I'll tell you a funny thing about that is I think I've alluded to or told you the fact that I was divorced twice before I found my soulmate. And A lot of reasons, whatever, it doesn't matter. And I've
Sure.
been encouraged to do a podcast on divorce, which I'm doing next week.
Oh, wow.
Not on the bashing side of things, but on the expectation side when you get married, and also how kids relate to
Sure.
these, devastations in their life. Some of it's some kids it's devastating. Some are like, thank God they're not together anymore, kind of thing,
Right.
right? We didn't have this. I wasn't in these fiery relationships where the kids were being so much affected. So, but we can get onto that later. But um, so what did you do before you worked at the chamber and
Yeah,
visited?
I initially I actually started doing church work. So I was a youth minister for 7 years at a couple different Catholic parishes. And then but concurrent with at least my first stint in that, concurrent with that, I was in business. And I had done some, started the way I started way at the bottom at retail. I was doing sales at like it was in the Midwest, so we don't have the
Yeah.
chain out here, but it was kind of like a circuit city,
Uh-huh.
and you're out there just selling like electronics and big screen TVs
I
and
did not know that about you. That's interesting.
camcorders. And then I ended up going from that to selling cars. I sold for a Honda dealership,
Oh,
and
dude,
then
I sold cars for about 5 minutes. That was the worst job I've ever had.
yeah, that was an interesting
Funny,
stint.
I sold. You'll understand this. I sold cab and chassis, and then I sold the service body. That
Oh,
was fine. It was when I had to do retail once a month that I had a problem with, and I'll tell you another story later, not here,
yeah.
but so you went to school to be a psychologist
Yeah.
or took psychology. So you were probably a good salesman because I think that all
I
salespeople have to be psychologists.
I agree with you. I think there's a relationship there between business and psychology. And so
One
I
hundred
did
percent.
I did the sales. So then I was in church ministry full time for about 3.5 years where I wasn't in business. But then, well, before I had completely left business, I had started working in a software company. It was a startup. So I was working like in this startup and I was working in church ministry at the same time. And I don't think it'll be a big shock to people to know that church ministry doesn't pay the greatest. So I was I was working for I was working in the software business with my friend. And but then I left and went to Oregon for 3 years and I did just full-time church ministry. But the whole time his business finally got more established and got got some feet under it, some legs under it. So he contacted me and said, "Hey, I want you to come back and take over the marketing department." So at that point, I just left church ministry altogether and I went into business full time. So I was in software overall for almost 10 years. And then I transitioned. I went into real estate. I did real estate for 8 years, 7 years, something like that. And it was the real estate that got me connected to the chamber. So
Okay.
when I was a realtor, I joined my local chamber, right? Became a member, became a volunteer, got on the board of directors, and
Got on a
then,
committee. That's
yep,
right. You got to get on a
exactly,
committee.
exactly. And then while I was on the board, the gentleman who was the executive for the chamber at the time, he and his wife decided to move back to the Midwest. It was like one of those pre-retirement moves,
Yeah.
and I was doing this is in '08. Real estate was not fun. Everything was upside down and short sales and foreclosures.
Oh yeah, I lost my job in '09.
Yeah, that was
In
a brutal
construction. Yeah.
time. So I decided to make a switch and I've loved it ever since.
Well, good for you. So I didn't know all this about you. We've never spent that much time together, but
Yep.
something you mentioned. So I'm a past Grand Knight with the Knights of Columbus. I've been a knight for, man alive, 38 years now. I've been
Yep.
a knight, and working with the church has been an economic roller coaster. We'll say it that way, or however
Yeah.
I should have thought of something else to say, but that's a tough job because of budgets,
Yeah.
and then you were dealing with children, and then you were dealing with their parents.
Yeah.
I taught RCIA. I assisted in a class for RCIA for 8 years, and
Yep.
working with a lot of young, well, we'll say young adults because these were over 18 kids. But and for those of you who don't know, RCIA is like catechism for adults. We'll say it that way. It's the
Yep.
stuff. I always thought that. So we're getting into Catholic stuff now. I always thought that the students that went through RCIA were better equipped than a 15-year-old that got confirmed, right?
Yeah.
So confirmation is wasted on teenagers. My point.
Yeah.
I believe that's true. They don't really understand. They're doing it for their parents. But the adults that came through RCIA were, you could see a different light in their eyes when they decided to become a Catholic, and the reasons they became a Catholic, it wasn't just because their parents made them, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So you were
Yeah.
dealing with youth groups, and you would, during that time of the youth group, they would do confirmation, right? So you were educating them after CCD.
Yeah, so we had the different parishes I was involved in at the time. There was a confirmation program for teenagers, but then we'd also have separate from that, like just a youth program for those who, that was just voluntary. Like you didn't have to go. There was no sacrament attached to it. So it was just,
Right.
you know, and so
So they kind of do both. Where the church I went to in Poway, they linked both of those together.
right, and we had them separate. So like if you just wanted to get the sacrament and you didn't really want to be involved, that's fine. And if you, you know, but we had more, we tried to have a robust program. And so it was, I loved it. It was fun. You know,
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
when I got my undergrad degree at Franciscan, the way they had it set up, it was very easy to double major. So I got my psychology degree and I also got a theology degree at the same time. And so I loved doing the youth ministry stuff, and then ever since, so since I've left full time, I've been, as you just pointed out, like yourself, I've been a volunteer catechist at my church, and I'm on an RCIA team right now. So love it.
Oh, good. That was fun. That was fun for me. And a few of my kids went through RCIA they let them go through as high school students, and I think they got more out of it now.
I agree.
I'd like to see, you know, obviously, you know, I have 8 children. I'd like to see more of my kids going to church now. And I think that, like me, they may come back when their children are a little bit older. So we'll see about that. But
yeah.
And so let me back up to 2 things. One, for those young people, a camcorder, look it up online. You'll see what it is. They don't know what it is. I hear people go, "Oh yeah, I taped it." I said, "Well, you didn't tape it. You videoed it on your phone. You didn't tape it." But that's another story.
That's funny.
And yeah, videotape. And I forgot the second thing I was going to say. But anyway, so let's talk about your family. Oh, so I was going to say this. I've had 3 people on my. You're a very kind man. And that, I mean that in the highest respect. I am not kind in that respect, right? When people meet, no one ever says, "Oh, I met Ed. He's very kind." They don't say that. They might say he's a nice guy. I hope they do, but they never say kind. So let's talk about your family. And I can see why you're that way from your background. But your family, to me, is just, I'm so excited about.
Oh,
you know,
well,
you can mention what you want about it, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, my wife and I, we've been married 32 years.
Awesome.
And running, and we have 6 children, and 2 of those are our kids span a pretty wide age bracket. So our oldest is 31 and our youngest is 14. So 4 of our kids are technically young adults, and then one's a freshman in college, one's a freshman in high school. Those are the 2 youngest, and so 2 of them are married. And they're both fairly young marrieds, like 4 years and 2 years. And so we have 2 grandkiddos. We have a 2-year-old grandson and a 1-year-old granddaughter from those guys. And then our oldest son is actually in the seminary here in San Diego to possibly become a Catholic priest for our diocese here in San Diego.
So that's what I was hoping you would bring up, and I didn't want to do it for you.
No, it's
because
fine.
I think it's super exciting. I think it's a little weird. I mean, if that had happened to me, not weird in an odd way, but just to have your son be a priest, I just think it'd be cool in a lot of ways, but also a lot of stress and things like that. And for him to have the discipline. I mean, there's a lot of discipline, obviously. For those of you who don't know who are Catholic, priests are very educated. They're very well trained. There's a lot goes into it. It's not just, you know, throwing on a robe and getting up there and talking. It's a lot of stuff goes into that.
And you know what's funny about that, Ed, that point you just brought up about all the training and schooling that goes into it. He was not a school kid. Like he was not an academic kid.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, if we're just honest, he hated school. And and when high school was done, he did dabble in community college a little bit here and there, but he was that kid hopefully he won't mind me sharing this, but he would go, like, he'd get halfway through a semester at, say, Palomar College or something, and pretty much he would have bailed out of, but he wouldn't have withdrawn from classes. He would have just stopped going, and then all those classes went in the tank, and so you'd have to retake half of those classes or whatever. And so, but he just went right into working after high school, and he got management roles at a couple of different places over time, like Chick-fil-A, Legoland, like different places like that, where he started at the bottom and worked his way up into management. But he had toyed with the call of the seminary, of the priesthood, for a number of years, and then when he fully got involved, or when he applied and got accepted and all that kind of stuff, it's been, I'm trying to think now, it's been, so he didn't, everybody who starts down that track comes from a different, place. Some people already have a college degree, right?
Right.
And then they come and do this. But since he didn't have a college degree at all, he did 3 years of undergraduate work there to get his philosophy degree. And then now you transition to the seminary side, the theology side, excuse me. And that's a 4-year thing. And he's 2.5 years into that. So he's got like 2 years to go or something like that. I don't know. I get confused, but it's
So, and for those
process.
of you that don't know that aren't Catholics, a lot of the priests out there, I've ran into several priests that are attorneys, architects. They have their degrees and all these other things, and which is very helpful, obviously.
Sure.
If you're building a church, or if you legal issues or whatever. But not every priest, like you said, and I'll tell you the college piece of that. I didn't pay for any of my kids' college. We helped them out a little bit, and 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 degrees so far. They kind of went on their own path, because some of them weren't. I was not a college person. I was not a sit in the class and read, and I would get bored after half of it. That's probably why he stopped, is because he was bored of it. His mind was moving too fast in another direction. So I don't take that as anything, except that I think and now he's got a calling. I'm impressed. So I just think that's an interesting dynamic in your family. And I forgot, you did tell me that you had kids in high school. So I have a grandson in high school. And I did not come from an educational background in our family. And this new school system is driving me bonkers. So compared to what my kids did, compared to what I went through, it's very different, very hard to manage. And as a person that I don't really, I'm not interested in taking the time all the time with their new system. Don't have any more kids coming up. So my kids are going to have to deal with it. I don't want to deal with it anymore. So when I go to the school, they go, "Oh, this guy again," kind of thing. So I'm super old school.
No, I know what you mean. Like, even with my daughter, who, my youngest daughter, who's a freshman in high school, and she is like uber talented, uber creative, but math is not her favorite thing. And so she'll be struggling with math, and I'll go in, and I loved math, and I'll go in and I'm like looking at this, and like,
so different.
They're using this Common Core methodology, this new methodology of trying to, and I'm like, I don't understand anything that they're trying to do, but here's how you do the stupid problem, And she's like, "Oh, okay. Why didn't they just tell us that?" I'm like, "I don't know. This is ridiculous."
But then if she doesn't show her work, then they go. So I can do a lot of math. My dad was super math, and so was my son, and I can do that same. I can do stuff in my head, right? They'd give me a problem, and I'd say, "Well, it's like 29.6," and they're going, "Well, how did you do that?" I said, "I don't know. I know how to do it." I said, "Yeah, but you got to show the work." And I said, "Well, I can't show you the work. I don't know." So anyway, let's get back to the chamber stuff. So I think it's important. And as I, venture out into this public speaking thing, I really want people to understand how important their story is in their life, right? And you have, like everybody, you have a great story. And I like the positivity of your story and things like that. And when I was running the chamber, I used to see companies come in to the chamber, and let's say they were a good cook, right? I'm going to open a restaurant, and they have no idea on how to run business, how to do taxes, how to do any of these things. And so we offered some things through Poway Unified Adult School. We didn't offer them. I mean, they offered them, but we helped them sell that so they could learn about, because I could usually tell if a person was going to go out of business right when they joined the chamber. I know that's a horrible thing to say, but you could just kind of see you don't have all these other skills you really need. And the difference, I used to tell people this, the difference between you handing an accountant a stack of receipts or a folder full of receipts versus giving it to them in a spreadsheet is about $2,500 a year. So if you want to spend that money, or you can take a class in Excel, kind of learn how to use it. What do you see when people join the chambers, young businesses, new businesses, you kind of see the same issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you definitely hit the nail on the head with how a lot of people first start a business, right? They get this idea that they can make a better widget, whatever that widget is, and they have a skill. They have an expertise in some aspect of making that widget. But as you pointed out, knowing all the things that they need to understand and be able to perform on to actually run a business are two different things. Making the widget is just one piece, and making it well and making it affordable or whatever their angle is going to be is just one piece. But because they've worked at maybe company A or company B, and they've seen how they've made the widget, and they're like, I can do this better. I mean, this is the way they're doing it's dumb or whatever. And then they venture out and frequently just have no idea how to make all the other pieces work, and then even how to get funding to help set themselves up, or how to, all this stuff. So yeah, kind of like you were saying, we don't try to be the masters of all of those things. And as you pointed out, like you guys partnered with your school district, we partner with a lot of organizations. The Small Business Development Center has an office here in Carlsbad. They do some great work on a lot.
They do, 100%.
Yeah, and so we try to, we want to definitely be the place to connect people to everything, and some of the things we have ourselves to help people. I often tell people one of the most, or pretty much, I would say pretty much the most valuable thing that I bring to the table to a member is my relationships.
Yeah.
I'm connected to so many things, and it doesn't matter what their issue or what their question or what they're looking for. I'm probably not necessarily the guy, but I know who the guy is, or the gal.
My wife's gonna laugh when she listens to this, because I always say, look, I know a guy, right? So I get calls, probably maybe it's down to 2 or 3 a week, where, Ed, do you know somebody who does this? I absolutely do. Give me 5 minutes, I'll connect you, I'll introduce you through email. I'll do whatever I have to do to help people out, because I grew up here in San Diego. That's one advantage I have. And two, before I ran the chamber, I was a member, right? So I felt like I was good at networking. I talked to a lot of people. I network in the grocery store now. I mean, I'm talking to people in the grocery store. So you do get these, strange connections, and I get people and it helps me in every business I've ever been in. Right?
Yeah, well, and people like you and like me, we're natural connectors. And we love doing it. And that's one of my biggest philosophies. And I know you and I share this from our discussions and our background and everything. But I think when people look I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here, but I'm going to just go on a pet peeve.
All my listeners are used to that, by the way, because
Okay, yeah, good. One of my pet peeves in my world is bad networking. People who are bad at networking. And what do I mean by bad at networking? Well, and I know you've seen this. So you come to a mixer, and I mean, I've actually thought about doing a video on all the bad networking techniques, but you come to a mixer and you have the machine gun business card approach. You're just going to go around and rifle your cards out to everybody, which is a complete waste of time. You should have just put those all in the trash can to begin with. Or the other person who just talks about themselves, who won't shut up. They will just go on and on and on about themselves. And or one of the other ones is somebody who's, you're at a mixer, a happy hour or whatever, and they're trying to close. You're like, hey, just, if you have a minute, just come over here. I got this QR code, and let's just do it. And you're like, no, I'm here to mix, buddy. I'm not here to sit down and watch you pitch and all this stuff. So, but what is good networking is learning about other people. And you and I are connectors, so we kind of, I don't know if we naturally did it or if we learned it young. I probably learned it young. I probably shouldn't say I'm natural, but learn about other people, get to know them, get to know what makes them tick, gets to know what they're passionate about, or how did they get into this part of their life. And And then when you feel there's a connection, hey, let's set up a coffee later and let's get together and talk. And you're fantastic at this. So I know between you and I'm preaching to the choir, but
Yeah.
our listeners, if people are out there who are thinking about if they want some tips on networking, don't take, come away with 2 or 3 actual connections you made at a happy hour, not you gave out 50 business cards that all ended up in the toilet.
Yeah. Well, it's a funny thing. When I went to work for this new company, they gave me a box of business cards. Well, I have Popple, right? So the ones you just put up people's phone. And I don't really offer it. If they say, hey, do you have a card? I'll say, I'll tell you what, I'll do this. I'll do the Popple thing on their phone. So it goes right into their phone, which is kind of slick. Plus it saves money on cards. But
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends that write sales books, right? You might know Steve Haru. Steve Haru is a guy that he's really well connected with the SDAR, the San Diego Real Estate
Oh, yeah.
Association of Realtors. And all the realtors know him because he's done speaks, and he does a lot of Vistage speaks, things like that. And he's been on my podcast, and he wrote a book, and I'm sure it's a good book. I have not read it. I have another friend that just has another book coming out this week. And I told a publisher one day, I said, I could write a sales book in 1 page, right? And a lot of it, and one of those things is don't go to sell somebody, go to meet a new friend, right?
Yeah.
Go to find out about it. And I kind of have this sign on my head, apparently, to people that says, tell me all about your life, because I can go to the grocery store and come away with, oh yeah, they have 3 kids and, they grew up in Florida. And yeah, I know the wife knows this person that I know. And I think that's really important, just to kind of go in and so I work with a lot of cities now. They're not interested in seeing a sales guy, but they are interested in talking to somebody different than the people in their office. So it's always just a good relationship to kind of hang out and talk to people. And then a lot of times they'll end up talking me into buying from me, talking me into selling to them, say it that way, right? Instead of me selling them anything. Because I'm not going to sell them a bad product. And if it is a bad product, I'll make it up with price, right? So they're always going to get a value. But the first lesson in sales is if you're a jerk, don't go into sales, right? Because a couple things are going to happen. You're going to get mad at people because they're going to say stuff that they shouldn't say. And you're going to have kind of rough skin, or just kind of let it bounce off, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. So networking. So I'm actually trying to get a class off the ground with Poway Unified Adult School about sales, right?
Nice.
And the nice thing about this is if someone had a company local here and they had 6 salespeople, they could send them to my class and it would cost them very little to get the same information they're going to get out of a $20 book or $8,000 seminar, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's all pretty simple stuff. But you know what? The work ethic, it's hard to get people to, first of all, salespeople will never admit they're shitty salespeople, right?
Yeah.
That's the first problem.
Yeah.
They got to get over your ego. You got to go be willing to learn things and to listen. I was listening to Jordan Peterson on a talk today, talking about how people just don't listen. Like they're not listening to what people are saying. They're laying out their problems, and then you try to sell them something that they didn't even talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
But networking, definitely. I used to have people that would stand at the same belly bar, right, the whole networking time. And I'd say, you just might want to try maybe 2 belly bars more, right? Just go introduce yourself to somebody and go, hey, what do you do?
Exactly.
What you do. So one of the resources that we haven't talked about, and I'm not talking for you, but in every chamber I've ever been involved in, there's always that HR company that will sell you their time part-time. So for small businesses out there, these are good people to talk to, right?
Yeah.
They'll give you 2 hours of information, so you don't have to have an HR person. They can give you all and there's a lot of resources citywide and countywide that you can get that are free. You got to hunt them down. Like the SDBC is that it?
SDDC. Yeah.
That's a great resource because they have all those people for no cost.
No cost. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, you're right. And again, that's kind of that connector mentality. We're connected to so many great resources for, like you said, the human resource side, the legal side, the compliance side, which is so
a big deal.
Yeah, it's so dicey for poor small businesses. I like to say that small businesses, they need to have their nose to the grindstone because they're trying to make a profit, keep the doors open. They don't have time to watch the insanity in Sacramento and other places, but that's what we're here for. Like, be a member of the chamber. We watch your back when all the stupid stuff comes down policy-wise. It's going to affect you, right? So that we can A, maybe alert you when maybe you should speak up, or B, just will be going to bat for you to say this is stupid, don't do this, or C, if it actually gets to law, to say, hey, watch out, make sure you dot these I's and cross these T's. So but yeah, so the compliance side, the HR side, the whether you need finance resources to grow your business, and lending and blah blah blah. So we're about all that stuff, and it's what makes us thrive. This morning I was our guest speaker was talking about he was well he hit on a lot of topics. Of course, it's January, so everybody's into goal setting, right? Which is natural. It's a good thing to do. But one of the pieces he hit on was knowing your why. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Because there's certain days where it's whatever you're doing, including what I do and what you do, it's not fun. I mean, there's days where it's just like, I'd rather just stay in bed. But so when you dig into your why, and I was sharing after he spoke, one of the things that really irritated me during the pandemic, like if you think of the height of 2020, and of course there's a lot. I mean, obviously, I'm sure you could do entire podcast episodes just on that, and I'm not trying to open, couple. I'm not trying to open that can of worms, but one that really got under my skin was this artificial determination by Big Brother over who was an essential business and who wasn't.
I get that.
And they decide, and they're just like, well, you're non-essential. According to whom? And so it's like, no, one of the things that fires me up every day to do what I do is that I believe every business is essential.
And every person, by the way, they all have
every person value
to humanity, right? That's
exactly.
I talk about this a lot. Yep.
Exactly. And because even if the sole purpose of your business is to put food on your table, that's friggin' essential.
Sure.
If the sole purpose of your business is so that you have a roof over your head, that's essential. I mean, I hated that whole distinction. And so for us, it's like, no, if you are an entrepreneur, a business owner, or whatever, you've got that American dream, you're going to make something, and you choose to join your Chamber of Commerce, we're going to come shoulder to shoulder beside you. We're going to accompany you on this journey and do whatever we can to help you achieve that goal, because we believe that you are essential.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great point. I never thought of it that way, but you're totally. So it was, the pandemic was very hard on me psychologically, a lot of it because of the lack of connection with people, right? I used to kid that I didn't like people, and now I just wanted to go up and hug people. Like 6 months in, I don't even care who they were. I wanted to hug them.
Right.
Just to say hello or something. And then you couldn't see their face. And there was it was hard, but it's in the past. And I learned a lot, and I grew a lot. I think, I have my podcast now. I'm doing a lot of other things that I wasn't doing before, but that's, I talk about just 1 in 400 trillion chance we were even born. We all have an intrinsic value to humanity. Amen. And talking about our why, I think it's important that people understand that if you're a realtor, that's not who you are, right? You got to decide who you are. That's what you do. And I struggle with this sometimes, and it's a little bit selfish on my side that I don't, it's a kind of a struggle in life to decide who you are and not what you do. You got to be able to separate those things. And I think it's all tied together. You were talking about why you're a good networker. One of the reasons is after having spent time as a youth minister and things like that, you had to listen to people, right? Your son, boy, is he going to learn a lesson in trying and listening to people, because you want to think, and the Catholic Church is, and any church organization, any organization has to try to make general rules about how they're going to apply whatever they're applying, right?
Sure.
But you have so many people that are coming in from all these different directions of why they're going to church, all these things, what their past is, what they've done, what they haven't done. I always say what they've done and what they failed to do, right? We have that every week. We hear that. And that's really a super cool skill. And I know a lot of people don't have that skill, by the way, that are in sales, and they need to learn that.
Yeah.
But their ego's too big to learn that. Yeah.
Yep. And you're right. It comes back to ultimately, like you said, the value of each individual. And I love, I've said before, and I mean this, I've said this to my board. I feel like the Chamber of Commerce is one of the best equal opportunity organizations in the world, because we literally, we don't care what your gender or your age or your color, race, religion. We don't care any of those things, no orientation. If you have a dream and you join your chamber and you're trying to make it happen, we're going to come shoulder to shoulder and do what we can to help you.
So you just did your 2023 marketing pitch right there. That is exactly a separator from what the chamber used to be. Wouldn't you agree? So it used to be the Good Old Boys Network, right? And all these things we hear about. By the way, ladies and young people, that Good Old Boys Network did exist. I don't think it exists as much now, but I don't think that that didn't happen. It happened. It was like slavery. I mean, it happened, and it wasn't right, but it happened.
Right.
We don't have that situation now. So that would, Bret, that would be a brilliant. You should put some marketing stuff together for that. That's a brilliant way to sell the chamber, and it's true. That's the other brilliant part of it. It's not, you're not just lip service. I know you long enough, and I know what I did at the chamber. I didn't care either. Didn't really care. I was there to help you. What can I do for you? And that's what we had to go out and ask some members. And I know it's hard to get surveys done and things like that, but you need to really, as a salesman, listen to people and say, what do you guys want? What do you want me to do? And I'll do whatever you guys, within reason, I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Yep. That's it. Maybe we should make more of a marketing campaign out of that, but that's a good idea.
No, that's what separates the old chamber from the new chamber. And the chamber of the U.S. should be doing that too. They should be pitching things the same way. Because we do have all this diversification now that has come to the top of the water, right? That we can see all these other people. And you were talking about how smart your kids are and how smart young kids are. This is a difference from when I was 15 years old and my grandson. His creativity is off the hook. I didn't even have, I guess looking back, I might have been creative, but I didn't really have the opportunity to show it, right? We didn't have that in school. We had an art class. I beat someone up in an art class once because they flicked paint on my shirt. That's what I remember about art.
Right.
Not if I could draw or paint. So that's so see, you're learning something already today. You have a new marketing campaign to work on.
I do. I love it.
Get that off the ground. Well, Bret, I know most people that come on my podcast I can talk to for like 3 days. So and you're no different. We'll get together in a couple months again and have coffee. And I really appreciate you being on here. But I got a couple of questions for you. So I started this and then I got away from it, but I was talking to somebody about leadership the other day. And so I have two questions. Tell me if you have a teacher, no matter if it was college, high school, elementary school, that stands out in your life that was a positive influence on you, and why?
My 6th grade teacher, Mr. Smith.
So normally, just to tell you, I rarely get an answer this quick, but this is why it was so important. So Mr. Smith.
Yeah, Mr. Smith in 6th grade at Monte Vista Elementary School. And, when you're that young, like I didn't understand leaders and things like that. But what I remember, there were a couple of times where I guess we were forming teams or something, and he chose me to be like team captain, and I couldn't figure it out. But he kept championing me as a leader, and I didn't totally get it or appreciate it, but he saw it in me way back then, and he had that kind of impact on me that like I felt like he believed in me before I even knew there was something to believe in. And he was a great teacher, and obviously, as you know, I mean, there's other great teachers I had along the way, but he stands out.
That's what I'm asking. Who stands out? And I had the same thing. So when I was in 5th grade, I had a principal come up to me, when they used to wear dark suits and a white shirt. And he put his arm around me and said, "You're a leader." And he and the same thing. I didn't understand what he was talking about, but he saw something in me. Okay, so the second question is same question, but tell me about a leader you've had in your life that you appreciated that was a good leader. So this is a question that oftentimes the guys look like you do right now, and I don't hear anything, or girls. But it sounds to me like you may have somebody, but tell me who you think stood out in your life as a leader.
Well, I've had a couple, so, different stops in life. like when I was in real estate, I had I paid to have a coach, you know, and so the real estate coaching company actually is, I'll give them a shout out because they're right here in Carlsbad, Buffini and Company,
Oh, I know
and
them.
yeah, they do. They work with realtors all over the country, and so I learned a ton from them, but and a ton about just like this mentality, this giving mentality, seek to give first and give value first, and then you'll get back what you need. But also there's a Servant Leadership Institute is another one that has really been impactful in my life. And so like Ken Blanchard, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, and there's a gentleman who's was I got to know through the Vista Chamber, named Art Barter, who put a lot of his resources into this Servant Leadership Institute and this concept of kind of flipping the org chart. You know, instead of having the leader at the top of a pyramid and dictating everything down, flipping the org chart upside down, where like the leader is the one on the bottom serving everybody above them to help them maximize who they are and what they can
Yeah.
become, because that just overall helps you get to the goals you're trying to achieve. And I love that concept. And so yeah, between those different folks, and then you know what's funny, Ed, and I bet you can relate to this too. And I'm not going to name these because I don't
Yeah.
want to throw anybody under the bus, but there's some bad leaders that you encounter along the way
Well,
too that are formative, right?
I was just going to say something to you about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, so I don't know. That's kind of what comes to mind with that
Well, those
question.
are awesome because I know you're honest, and those are awesome, honest answers. I read a lot about leadership. I listen to a lot of TikToks and uh, Facebook things and TED Talks and all those. And what I find is we have a lot of people talking about leadership, but not executing leadership, right? It's
Yeah.
the 80-20 rule, right? It's just like anything. There's always 20% of them are really doing it, 80% are just blowing wind. But I'll tell you a funny story about Ken Blanchard. So I come home one day and there's this, my kids are home, like three or four of them, I don't even know. And there's this boy sitting next to one of my daughters. And I said, how you do? My name's Ed. And he stands up and says, hi, my name's Atticus. And I'm like, oh, cool, Atticus. Where do you go to work? Jackie from school, blah, blah, blah. Just normal thing. He was just over there hanging out. And I said, well, what does your dad do? He says, hey, he works for my grandpa. I said, oh, what does your grandpa do? He says, I don't know. He writes books and stuff like that. I said, who's your grandpa? He says, Ken Blanchard. And I said, you don't even know, do you know who Ken Blanchard is? He's like, well, my grandpa. I said, no, no, no. You know who he is in the world? I mean, this kid, he's like the godfather of motivation, like, right?
Yeah,
He's like a Zig Ziglar.
exactly.
And it was so funny that, as parents, like, I'm sure Michael Jordan's daughter just knows Michael Jordan as dad, doesn't care if he played
Exactly.
basketball. But I'm like, dude, that's crazy to me because I know I've read all your dad's books, I've listened to
Yeah.
him speak and all that. And I saw him, your predecessor, is that the right thing?
Yeah.
The
Ted?
person there before you, yeah, took me to one of your events, and Ken Blanchard was there, and I spoke with them and told him, I know your grandson Atticus. He goes, yeah, he's a good boy, and this and that,
Yeah.
kind of typical Ken Blanchard, Mr. Positive.
Yeah.
So that was just so funny that, and then I had run into Atticus a couple of years later, and I heard his name, and I went, okay, how many Atticus kids
Sure.
do you know named that? And it was him. But that's a cool story. So I
Yeah.
was one of those people that I can't really think of a good leader that I ever had. I've watched good leaders that weren't leading me and thought they were really impressive. I had a principal at an elementary school that I thought was the best manager I ever met in my life, and he
Mm.
was very good at managing the teachers and things. However, in the system, then they would rotate him about every 5 years, so I lost him after a few years, but to another school. Well, Brett, I tell you, I could do another podcast with you at some point, and maybe we will in 6 months. Kind of see what the economy does here, and
Sounds good. Yeah.
if something comes up. But I think this is a great podcast. I won't probably, well, I'll talk to you afterwards. So just stay on for a minute. I really appreciate being on today. I know you have things to do but you did a
Yeah.
great job. So
Thank you. And I totally enjoyed it. Loved our conversation. Appreciate the offer. And if there's a chance in the future, I'd love to come back.
yeah, so hang tight for a second. Let me do my outro here. So this is the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. You can email me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. If you have a guest or if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, let me know. We'll see if it's a good fit and we'll get you on there. So happy New Year again. I'll be back next week with a topic nobody really wants to hear about, but everybody wants to hear about. So anyway, thank you for listening and please share my podcast.